Good morning, everybody. This is Reese and Loretta with Coffee with Coaches. We're a part of the Dirt podcast. This section is going to be focusing more on training applications, questions related to running and how we execute races. And the other part of the podcast is going to be more interviews and the the social aspect of the community of ultra running. So welcome. Today's topic is crew and pacing strategies. So this is something that, I have a lot of questions on because I don't really use a ton of crew in my races. So I'm glad that Loretta here is going to be helping kind of guide us through what a crew is, what makes the best crew, what they should and shouldn't do, who should be part of your crew. So we're going to have fun with this one today, especially with Kettle coming up this next weekend. Maybe this is something everybody can think about over the next few days, make any last minute changes if you need to. Or just check off your list and say, yep, I've done that, and know that you're solid. So Loretta, I guess before we get into it, how are you doing? How was last week? How was this week? What's new?
I'm doing really great. Let's see, we skipped last week, so kind of missed the recap of Bayshore Marathon, which I paced one of my athletes, and she got about a 10-minute PR on the marathon. So that was a super fun day, beautiful in Traverse City. The weather was perfect. Actually, on the course that day, there were 4 records broken. That tells you how great, the weather was. So that was cool. And I have been tapering. So, when I taper, I do crazy things. So I've been doing a little bit more painting and doing a lot more with plants to keep my mind busy. And I will be jumping in on the 6 Days in the Dome 24-hour next Friday in Milwaukee.
Oh, fantastic. Good luck. It was last year that I think you and I met each other face to face for the first time at this event. I think we were at your Airbnb that you rented a couple days beforehand. And that was super fantastic. We met a couple other friends down there too, and it was fun. So best of luck this year. And it's exciting. I'm glad that, you're coming off of that pacing duty and you're feeling nice and strong this week. And I can sympathize because, last Saturday I was tapering and I ended up building my girlfriend and I a dining room table. Spent about 12 hours at my parents' house, just ripping wood, cutting wood, assembling, Craig jigging, all of that. And Sunday morning I woke up and I was like, man, I feel like I got hit by a truck because I wasn't fueling well. I wasn't hydrating well. I was just focusing on building this table. So I guess that's a good nugget of wisdom right from the get-go is, during this taper time, don't do anything too crazy with this extra energy that you have from not running.
Right, so, exactly. Keep it low key, keep it low stress. And, back to the Dome last year when we met, you got a little taste of crewing, and how my crew works. So
yeah, that was one of my first introductions into actually crewing somebody. So, me personally, I do a lot of my own events on my own and I just rely on the aid stations. And I got into ultra running just from, I guess, the style of self-sufficiency of just being outside in the woods and using your, the opportunities that are there for you and, trying to go as far as you can. And, by the time I started racing, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do the same thing, but now we have aid stations, so it makes it a little easier. Right. But now going into Kettle this year, I realized that if I want to go as fast as I can possibly go, it would definitely behoove me to have a crew that knows what they're doing. So I guess, in your idea, what is a crew? What makes a crew? Let's start there.
Okay. All right. Well, I think a crew can be composed of a variety of different people and the amount of people, right? Sometimes the races that I've been at, my crew is one person, especially like when I'm doing a lot of the 24 hours on the track, one person can handle it because you're in one spot and you're not moving, throughout the day. But it is nice to have a couple people, I think, if that's something that's available for you, because it's nice to have a couple people to problem solve, I think, because I think that's one of the big important things of the crew is to problem solve for you so you don't have to on race day. So your job is to just run and their job is to take care of you. And so that's the way I look at a crew when I'm looking at, the races that I'm doing.
So you mentioned something. You said if you can have a crew, can you kind of go through how do you know what races you can have a crew at, what races you can't have a crew at? And then when do you get to see your crew? If you have crew, can they just follow you at any point during the race, or
Right. Yeah.
how does that
So
work?
I think most races allow a crew. I guess what I was referring to is sometimes people don't have anyone to crew them. And so if that's not possible, Reese is doing these on his own. He did Kettle 100 last year on his own. And it's possible to do it without a crew, but it does make it a little bit less stressful sometimes on the athlete to be able to have somebody crewing them and making sure they have all of the supplies that they need. Of course, we have the option of drop bags too. So, you can kind of go either way with that. I personally have always went with the crew, but it's partly because my husband is my crew chief. And so he's always at the race anyway. So, and then I've had it on occasion more than just him, but so I think that's kind of where it's at. There was a second part of your question. What was that?
I guess like how do you know what races you can crew at? Can you
Okay, so
crew
I
at any
think,
races?
yeah, I think from my experience, any race allows crews. Not every race allows pacers, but they allow to have crew.
Okay. And can the crew just meet you at any point on the trail, or how do you know where they're going to meet you?
Right. So what I like to do for myself and for the athletes that I coach is, that the websites of these races are pretty thorough these days. So they usually have a nice spreadsheet that's put out that will tell you all of the places where aid stations are, the GPS coordinates, so that your crew has that. And then also where people can have crew and where they can't. Because there are designated spots where you can't have crew, and you want to make sure you're following that guideline, because you can be disqualified from a race if you take aid outside of aid stations or where your crew shouldn't be. So you want to make sure you follow that. So typically for me, with athletes, I have 7 athletes running Kettle this weekend. So I've put together a sheet with the crew for each of them, because I have people running various distances, and it shows, what's going to be available at that aid station, if crew can be there, the GPS coordinates, and then I put together and also a pace chart that goes with that, because I think it's a nice reference point if you have crew to have an idea of when you're going to be coming into those aid stations, so your crew can be there for you.
Okay, awesome. So I guess a crew is just a group of people that know you, that are going to meet you at different points down the trail during this race where they legally can.
Right.
So it sounds like there's some places during races that they can't meet you. And I think sometimes it has to do with like parking,
Right.
permitting, and stuff like that. So it's safe to say that it's important to follow race rules and regulations as far as where you
For
can
sure.
and can't have a crew.
For sure, because I think those places that where crew is not allowed is mostly for safety, or like you said, regulations. There's just not allowed in that area. So you want to be respectful of the race director, so that there's not any issues, having the race on that course again in the following years. So definitely following whatever the guidelines are of the race in the crewing spots.
Okay. So then everybody's following the rules and regulations. So you said that your husband crews you most of the time,
Yes.
but who else would you use for a crew? Like, is it the more the better? Like, what kind of logistics do you think about when you're planning, like, hey, who is going to help me during like this usually once in a lifetime opportunity that I
Right.
have to go run?
Right. So first of all, it's sometimes tricky to find people because it's a huge time commitment and maybe a big travel and, logistics piece for people to join you. But I also think that a lot of people want to help and volunteer. I have some awesome friends that have come. My last race in Ohio, I had 2 friends that came to pace me, and then my husband was there. So they all crewed and paced me through the day. Or sorry, I had 3 friends come to pace me and crew me through the day. I think definitely having 1 is nice. Having 2 is nice to be able to bounce things back and forth. And well, some people may just crew because they're not don't want to take part in the running piece. It's also nice to have a couple other members that if you want some pacers later in the race, that they're also available. So when I'm looking at a race, I usually like to have at least 1 person that's in charge of crewing, and then a couple others that are there to help pace me if I decide I want pacers late in the race. It's nice to have, I like usually to have 2 or 3 people for me has been a nice number.
Okay, fantastic. So that's kind of like personal preference then, like how many
I think
people you
so.
want.
Yeah. And I think, I always talk to my athletes about, it's nice if you have somebody that's knowledgeable about racing, of course, when my husband and I went into this, neither one of us were knowledgeable. So, we were just kind of making our way through it. Of course, we've learned a ton over the years. But, if you have somebody, like you said, you have somebody that's coming that has some experience, that's definitely going to be a bonus for you because they understand crewing. There's pieces of crewing that I talk to my athletes about. So I always suggest that you write a list of like do's and don'ts for yourself. Like, what you like. Do you like somebody to be a cheerleader, or does that make you angry? Like what pieces of encouragement do you want along the way, right? Because sometimes what they think is helpful is not what you think is helpful. So I think making it clear up front is really important to give to your crew. Like, this is what I like, or this is what I don't like. And then I also like, one of the things for me that's really important is don't ask me too many questions, right? Especially late in a race. I can't think. So my suggestion to my crew has always been like, give me like 2 choices. If I have more than 2 or maybe 3 choices, it's just too overwhelming for me, and I just get annoyed and I just can't answer them because I'm tired, and the whole idea of the crew is to kind of support you so you're not mentally overexerting because you're already doing that in the race. So that's a big piece that I think about is, type something out for your crew, have a conversation with everybody before the race day so everybody's on the same page of what their role is, so that it can go as smooth as possible for you. And so that's one of the first things I talk about with my athletes. Like, okay, if you're going to have crew, make sure they have this spreadsheet so they know where to be and when to be there. And then what you might need at those spots. I always encourage my athletes to really well mark all of their things. So I have like a race kit that I mark everything out. So that's because you want things easy to find as possible. So for me, I try to go through with my husband because, the way I organize things may be different than he would. And so he might not know where things are. So I'm like, okay, this is where I put it. Doesn't always listen, but I do say this is where I put it. This is, so you can grab it really quick. I mean, that's the whole point is, right, crewing is to make things as efficient as possible. So when you're coming up to aid, your crew has all the supplies you may need. Let's say it's Band-Aids or new shoes or socks or, Coke. I mean, whatever it is, your crew will know that. If you're in a race that allows you a little second to shoot a text to your crew so they know, or if you're like at the last aid station, like next aid station, I'm going to want X, whatever you want, tell your crew ahead of time so they can be prepared for you.
Okay, perfect. So I like that you're touching on the psychological piece. I think that's huge when you have a crew that can motivate you in the proper ways. So you said, sometimes crews can be cheerleaders. You said sometimes crews can be like coaches, sometimes they're, a crew motivator can be like a little bit more militaristic. Everybody's different with how they best receive motivation. I guess, like, just on a tangent here, what kind of motivation is best for you? Do you like a cheerleader, or do you like somebody to just give you the facts, or what do you like when somebody's screwing you?
I think I just like, just give me the facts, give me what I need. Don't say too much to me and I'll just keep going because it becomes too much if I get too much feedback.
Yeah.
And I don't, another thing that the crew has to do, it's a really hard job being a crew and a pacer. I've been on both sides and I would much prefer being the runner because, there's a lot of responsibility when somebody's saying, I'll be your crew chief or be one of your pacers, is they're going to help you make decisions. And so it's really important for you as a runner to tell them, like, okay, I do not want to drop out of this race unless I'm injured or sick or whatever your guidelines are, because there's going to come a point during the race that they might have to help make that decision. And what I've found through experience is, when I first started doing this and being around people and you started to get a little worried for their health. But now, since I've been doing it for so long, I kind of see some of the stages people go through that's just kind of a normal stage while you're doing these big events. So you want to make sure your crew and your pacers are aware of that, right? You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows. That's very normal. You're going to maybe feel like you're going to die, but you really aren't. So, you need to make sure your crew is prepared for all of these emotions that are going to happen on race day so they don't panic for you. Because the last thing you need to do is your crew panicking you, so everybody just kind of needs to stay calm and teach them ahead of time how you want them to be your problem solver. And what's going to be best.
Yep. I had that conversation with my crew for Kettle just a couple of days ago. Brandy Henry asked me, she goes, if things are getting rough out there, like, what do you want me to say? Like, what can I do to like motivate you, you know? And I was like, I really just need the facts. I just need somebody to give me my bottles, and I need somebody to give me a high five on the way out, because it's probably already something that I'm thinking about. So with that being said, like you were talking about before, I probably wouldn't want my mother being my crew, because she's too nurturing, she's too caring. If I'm in a rough spot or if I'm puking or whatever, like she's going to be like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. And that absolutely drives me nuts when I'm in the hurt locker, you know, like
Yes. Yep.
even, you know, like through my youth when I was skateboarding, anybody who knows me knows that, like, hey, like if I hit myself or if I go down on the concrete hard, like don't come up around me, don't coddle me. Like I don't need this touchy feely. I need, like, give me my thing so I can get going, you know?
Right,
So
right. Yeah. Yeah, and that is sometimes hard with having my husband do it, because it makes me a little bit weaker at points that I wouldn't be if he wasn't there, say, like basically trying to take care of me, you know? And
mhm.
so, yeah, you just have to be really careful, because you want a good balance of that to make sure you can get through without having somebody psychologically making you feel like maybe you can't or that you shouldn't because they don't think you look so great. You know what I mean? So it is a hard balance, I think. And I think the other thing, you know, crews are making lots of decisions. I remember when I was running Tunnel Hill in 2019, and I had no idea where I was in the pack. I was just running my own race, right? That was my goal for the day, is get out there, run your own race. Don't get caught up in competition. Just do what your plan is. And I did. And I was very much on target for that. But my crew was counting runners, you know, so they knew where I was at in the field. And so then they were trying to decide at what point should they tell me what place I was in, you know, because now I'm getting ready to move into, you know, third place overall for females. Do they tell me? Do they not tell me? And, you
Mm.
know, like I said, I was clueless. So when they told me at the point, it was probably around mile 60-ish. So it was a good timing for them to tell me that, because it kind of gave me a little bit of a boost, because I was, you know, of course, getting tired. So then I had an idea of where I was at. And then when I, you know, then next thing you know, they're telling me where second is, and you know, and then I moved into first. But you know, so that is something that's nice for your crew to watch, but also maybe have a plan. Do you want to know where you are if you're going for place, or do you want to know exactly where you are as far as time? Let's say you have a time goal in the race. Do you want them to help calculate? Because I don't know about you, but in a race, I can't do math. I think I can, but I lose all control of counting. And so then I start panicking myself. So
Yeah, that is interesting. I never thought about it that way. Like having a conversation with your crew about, hey, if I'm getting close to cutoff, or if I'm at this place, like at what point do you tell? Because I could imagine, like, depending on the person, that added pressure can either
yes,
motivate or it could stress somebody out. And
yes,
that kind of, like, you know, enthrallment and stress, like those feelings are very similar in the body, but they're interpreted differently by the brain. You know,
right,
anybody who takes like a psychology class finds out that, like, the feeling of stress and the feeling of excitement are the same in the body, but it's your, like, mind's interpretation of what's actually going on that's huge. So I can imagine, you know, how does that pressure treat you? Does it motivate you, or does it kind of
right.
like kind of sink you down? Does it make you stressed? Does it bring you off of your pace plan? Does it make you go out a little bit too hard because you think you have more time to make up, or whatever it might be? So that's a really good conversation. I never thought about that.
Yeah, yep. I think it's important. I did have another race. It was actually my first 12-hour, my first big ultra, and my watch died. And, you know, I had 12 hours and I had, you know, a goal. And when my watch died, you know, it just like that, I didn't know where I was at in the race anymore. And I sort of started to have a little panic attack. Luckily, I had a pacer that was nice and calm, who had his watch on and started watching his watch, and, you know, kept me at like, okay, because at that point I'm like, I had lost an hour in my head of where I was at. So I'm like, I can't reach my goal now. You know, so I'm starting to like kind of unravel. And he's like, no, you're fine. You know what I mean? And kind of kept me in check, which I think is good. You know, having that person that can be calm and keep you moving.
Mhm.
That works really well for me. Calm and a bit motivating, but not over the top.
So now let's say you're doing a point to point 100, or even like kettle, like two lollipops. It's basically like 2 point to points, right? Or two out and backs.
Mm-hmm.
How does your crew know, like, where and when to meet you, because everybody's going to be running at their own pace. And if you want your crew to follow you throughout the course, that means they have to be ahead of you, but you don't want them too far ahead. Otherwise, they're going to be missing you at other places where they could be getting help. How do you
I think that's,
logistically plan where to meet?
Yeah, but I think that's where the spreadsheet is really important, where I do a time estimated spreadsheet. So I'm going to say, let's say I'm going to run this at between, 24 and 28 hours. So I'm going to have, a pace kind of calculated out. This would be just like an easy calculation of 24 hours. What is that, like 15-minute pace or whatever that is? And then I calculate that by time. So I'm going to be at X aid station at 8 a.m., the next aid station at 10 a.m. So the crew can kind of follow along. It's going to be a guideline, and they'll be able to see as the day progresses, do I fall between the 24 or the 28 hour? Kind of where I am, so that they can be at that next checkpoint at the right time. And usually aid stations are far enough apart that I think they don't have any problems getting to the next one. But then it's also a good thing to talk about with your crew. Do you want to see them at every aid station that's available, or do you want them to skip some aid stations and move up? Sometimes for me in a race, it's nice to miss them a couple of times, so I'm just running through aid stations because I'll usually have enough, to carry me through. But then maybe later in the race, when I need a little bit more mental support, it's nicer to maybe have them come to a little quicker aid stations, closer together.
Okay. Yeah. Because the idea being you stop more times, you see your crew more times. There's more opportunities to get wrapped up in a conversation, more opportunities where your crew is going to ask you, are you okay? And then you're going to have to answer them without sounding like a jerk or blowing them off. But so this idea of like going through the aid stations and maybe using them if you need to, but knowing that like, hey, like these aid stations are just supplementary to what I'm going to refuel with my crew.
Yeah, because sometimes for me, I think it's nice to not see the crew too frequently because, you kind of get into a rhythm. And when you see them, it kind of, maybe slows you down a little bit, kind of, makes you think about what's hurting that you weren't thinking about because you were just kind of getting in a zone. So yeah, so thinking about that, like how frequently, and you know what? We talk about this a lot on this podcast about being flexible and adaptable. That has to, happen with your crew too. And your crew needs to be flexible and adaptable because things are going to change. We're going to be problem solving on the fly. And what you thought where you wanted your crew to be may change. Maybe you're having a really tough time. And so now where you thought you were going to have them skip a few aid stations, you've changed your mind. And I think that I've been lucky enough to have crew that often recognize that for me. Like, and I don't even maybe recognize it. Like, I think she's struggling. We're going to meet her sooner than she expected. And that's always been really welcomed to me because it is when I'm like, oh, I'm really struggling. It's nice to have a little support a little sooner than I expected. So I think having a crew that's kind of in tune to how you're feeling and making those adjustments, on the fly because things happen.
Yeah. And as a runner too, I could imagine that like if you meet your crew or if you think of things that you may need that may be a little bit more timely, maybe telling your crew at the first aid station so that way, like they can have it ready for you by the next one. Like say like if you really want a grilled cheese sandwich, but you don't want to sit and wait around for a little bit, maybe you can tell your crew, hey, at the next aid station in 3 miles, I should be getting there in 30 to 40 minutes. Can you have a grilled cheese sandwich ready for me so I can just grab it and go? So maybe like forethought and planning, like, hey, what are you going to need down the road? Maybe you start to get some chafing, but you know that like, oh, your crew may or may not have your anti-chafe ready. Maybe that's when you tell them like, hey, like in 40 minutes, I might be pretty raw, like, or I can last that long, so if you can have that ready for me, that would be much appreciated because I don't want to stop and wait for somebody to dig around in the bag, you know?
Absolutely. When I was running Tunnel Hill, I came through an aid station. It was a little out and back. So they were making fresh brownies. So my husband noticed they were making fresh brownies, but he didn't want me to wait for them. And even the aid stations, saw me coming. They're like, we will have them ready when you come back. So did the out and back, and I came back to fresh brownies. So those little things can perk you up on a run too. So I think, crew that's out there thinking about those things that might be little pick-me-ups to get people going. The other big thing for me about the crew is efficiency, right? So I don't have to do really anything when I come through an aid station. I just am ready for my stuff. So typically if I'm running a point to point or an out and back, I have a couple of water bottles in my vest, or one water bottle, depending on, the distance. And I have 2 sets of them so that my crew has them. They have them refilled. I'm just pulling it out of my vest, or if I have a handheld or whatever, and just swapping it out. So I'm not, and so whatever's left over in there is left over. I usually try to sneak and get it all done so I don't get in trouble, just in case I'm running behind on my water. I'll drink it up. But the other thing is, it's really good because your crew can kind of monitor how much you're drinking. So if your goal was to drink that bottle and you only drank half of it, they have an idea of where you are with your hydration or your fueling. So I usually come out, maybe have all of my, like, I use untapped gels. So I have them in my pocket. So I'm dumping them out when I come through, so they can throw them away. And then they have an idea of how many I took in, too. So I think it's a good way to kind of track the runner by looking at what's gone when they come through. So I swap out no matter if I have stuff left or not have stuff left, just so it's fresh and we know that I have enough to get to the next spot. So my directions to my crew too is just keep me moving through, hand me my stuff, I'll walk through. Don't let me stop, because you can waste so much time stopping, so I try to advise all my athletes, like, under 2 minutes, like as quick as you can. I mean, of course, if you have to use the bathroom, it might take you a little bit longer, but those minutes at aid stations can be the difference between meeting cut off and not meeting cut off, or meeting your goal or not meeting your goal. So you don't want to go back and look at your race and go, dang, I didn't meet my goal because I spent too much time at aid stations. If your goal is to move through fast. Like my first 100 was Hennepin, and my goal was to finish. I never ran 100 and to have fun, so I was dancing and singing at aid stations, so, it just depends on what your goal is there, but still I still had crew and they were still, providing me the stuff, but we were having a little bit more fun.
For sure. So I guess to summarize, like what a crew can do for a runner is so like when a runner comes in, a crew can like refill their water bottles, maybe give them new water bottles, or even if your strategy is to just have a complete separate pack and you just exchange packs so you don't have to think about filling something up. Yep. You could do that. Your crew can give you a massage.
Yes,
they can
absolutely.
give you some Theragun treatment. They could lance any blisters, maybe change your socks and tape up any sore spots that you have. They could change your shoes for you if you want them to. They could be dumping ice on you. Yes. They could be giving you motivational things. Say it, if you talk about this before the race too, like, hey, if I'm like super down, like bring back my spirits by showing me a picture of my kids or my loved one or something like that. Can a crew meet you down the trail and run in with you and then run out with you? What's the idea on that?
I'm not sure that I mean, I'm not sure how closely that is monitored, but most likely, if it's not a place to have a pacer, it probably could be a potential disqualification. I'm not sure that races are that tough, but I mean, it could be. So I think it would be best if the crew didn't, they can kind of follow you along as you come through aid, hand your stuff, pick up your garbage, and, get off of the course. I think normally there's a marked amount of space where the crew is supposed to be by the aid station so that you're within certain parameters of the aid station.
And that's what I always thought too, was that, like say if you are crew and you're at an aid station, like you have leeway as far as following your runner around the bounds of the aid station, but you shouldn't be like meeting them half a mile down the trail, running in with them, following them a half a mile out, or muling anything for them, afterwards. But would it be safe to say that as long as you're within sight of the aid station, you're somewhat within aid station bounds?
I would think so. Think so. Yeah. Okay. I've never seen anybody like enforce like really strict rules, but I would guess that would be pretty safe.
Okay, perfect. But
and I also think,
pacers can go in and out, right? Too, right? They can follow the runner, they can help the runner, but pacers can't like mule for an athlete unless specifically.
I think it depends on the race. Some races allow muling and others do not. And of course, we have kettle coming up. I don't believe there's muling is allowed in kettle, and there's certain points at which somebody can start pacing you. So, it might be some races are after dark, some races are after 50 miles. I'm trying to pull what kettle is real quick, but I can't remember. There's do you remember what aid station you can start having pacers? at Kettle?
Here's a really good example of where I'm terrible is that I didn't even look because
Look
so
that up because there will be a spot.
yeah. So definitely check the website. I know it's listed on there. I've seen it, but
Yes, it is. And I
for
can't think
me,
of what it is.
in my prep, I'm like, if I'm not going to use it, don't even put that like information in my brain, you know?
Right, right.
But yeah, so I guess maybe we should just kind of define what muling is for people that don't know.
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
think muling's just when you carry gear for a runner for them to use while they're running. So
Right.
I think in Leadville they allow muling, which is when your pacer can actually carry all of your gear for you. So say let's say you run shirtless and you don't want to wear a pack and you don't even want to wear a belt or even have handhelds. You can ask your nice pacer to carry all of your water, carry all of your gear, all of your nutrition. So that way, all they have to do is give it to you. So,
Right. Yep. Yeah.
which is not allowed at Kettle. And I
Right.
think is not allowed at most races.
I think so too. It's not a lot at Hennepin as well. I want to go back a second. You mentioned ice, and I think because we're so close to Kettle, I just kind of want to mention this again. It's going to be warm. I mean, I think the last I saw was in the 80s. Not terribly humid, it sounds like, so yay. But one of the things I like to do is I wear a neck bandana and I wear an ice hat. So I have it prepared for my crew. They know when I come in, just have my other ice bandana ready to go, take the one off, wrap the other around me. So we're not messing around with filling it and, swapping over. So two is always nice. And then my ice hat has a little pouch in the back. So they're able to just come up and fill it and I don't even have to take my hat off. So, thinking about anything you can think of to make your run a little bit more efficient is what your crew can help you do, right? Because then you're not messing around with any of that or thinking about it. They know. So I ran Brazos this winter and I had, let's see, I had 3 crew and they all had a task when I came in. One filled my ice hat, one switched my neck bandana, and one gave me hydration. So everybody knew what their role was when I came in, which made those exchanges pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I guess to recap here, everything that we talked about. So crews are comprised of several individuals, one or several, who are going to be following you at designated aid stations along the trail that can help you refill on your hydration or your nutrition or really help you with any type of race items that you may need with blisters or shoe care or icing down, changing out gear, whatever it might be, motivational support. They're not really allowed to follow you outside of aid stations, so make sure that your crew sticks within like an aid station boundary, and not to take advantage of that. And crews definitely rely on their runner to give them some logistical insight as far as like where they're going to be at certain times. So I think as a runner, it's safe to say that we should be briefing our crews like, hey, this is what I expect to be, or this is what time I expect to be at each aid station. This is what I would like. This is the type of motivation I would like. Here is my strategy, and maybe go through with your crew what type of, like, if all else fails type of plans that you have. Say if your A goal, your B goal, your C goal goes out the window, maybe you can talk with them about like what happens then. Because as a crew, like they're giving a lot of their time and a lot of their energy and basically their weekend, to help you accomplish your goal. So I think, as long as we can remain courteous outside of the race as well as inside of the race to the volunteers, our crew, and think about their feelings too, just because they are giving so much to help you. That would definitely help the crew runner experience. And just a quick anecdote, I had that conversation with my crew, Brandy. I said, I don't want to see her too often because I want her to feel like she's not rushed to every aid station. I want her to feel like, oh, I have some time to, kick it with some of the volunteers, maybe check in with them, cruise Instagram or Facebook, or maybe even sit down and have a bite to eat without thinking I need to, be here and be here and be here and be here. So I think that's important too, is maybe as a runner asking your crew, like, okay, now you put all the focus and the attention on me. Now, as a runner, what can I do for you that would help out? Maybe treat your crew to dinner before or afterwards. Maybe, do something nice out of the kindness of your heart for them. I'm still planning on what I'm going to do for Brandy after Kettle. So hopefully she
Yeah, I
doesn't
think
listen
that's,
to this
pretty
podcast if she
common
doesn't see
is
it
that,
coming.
yeah, I think it's pretty common for the runner to give some, maybe a small gift to the crew and the pacers that help you out. Just, appreciation gift, I think is really nice to do too. So yeah, I think that's good.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. It was a great conversation with you today. I know I took away a lot just about the crew and the experience of, having other people rally around you and help you in support of your goals. So thanks for all the insight. I know you have such a great amount of wisdom, both from your own racing as well as from firsthand experience, seeing other crews and talking with other crew members and whatnot. So you're a wealth of information, and I appreciate all the insight that you've given to us today.
Sure.
I guess, do you have any last words or anything else come to mind?
Just sort of a last tip. So let's say you are crewing or pacing and you just really don't know what to do to help your runner. Maybe they're struggling with nutrition or hydration, or maybe they have a blister issue or whatever. Remember, there's also aid station volunteers out there that usually have a lot of experience and wisdom too, that you might be able to pull from. So there may be other crews that are able to help you. Sometimes, you may be short of something, and people out there, we have such an amazing community, are willing to help and kind of rally around as a community. So don't be afraid to ask other people. For myself, I have athletes that will be running this weekend at Kettle. All of their crew members, I tell them to give them my number, phone a coach. I will help problem solve from a distance, but there's also people right there on the course that I can help get you through. So yeah.
Absolutely. We have a huge community around us, whether they're part of our crew or not. The volunteers, the race organizers, even, other runners. I personally get so much inspiration and motivational uplift just from seeing other people on the trails and running other races with people. So I guess the more open you are to everybody's motivation and excitement and I guess willingness to see human potential, we can all go far distances and have a great
Right.
time.
Absolutely. And I think collaboration is key in all parts of life. So, even if you see somebody out there struggling and you're a crew and a pacer, you might be able to help somebody else and make it to their finish that they might not have made it to if you weren't there, because there are going to be people out there without crew that may need a little bit of help. So if you can be out there and help a runner, just do it. It'll make you feel great, and you can help make their day too.
Well, awesome. This has been a great episode of Coffee with Coaches. Sorry we missed everybody last week, but it was great being in line with you this week, Loretta. And yeah, best of luck this week and next week. And with 6 days, we'll check in before 6 days in the Dome, right? Or are we going to take next week off?
We'll probably be taking next week off, because I will be off in Milwaukee and getting ready for my race the following day. So yeah, good luck to you at Kettle. May everything come together on race day and you just crush that course record. I'll be following along frantically all day. That is one thing that happens on race day for me. I never get any sleep because I'm watching everybody and cheering from afar.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Anything can happen in 100 miles. So
For sure.
I'm excited to push myself as hard as I can, but I'm also open to puking and rallying and, having the entire day fall apart. So I think that's what it comes down to is, prepare for the best and acknowledge that even the worst can happen and give it your shot and try as hard as you can, be appreciative to everybody that's there. And, best of luck to everybody else running Kettle and with everybody else's races and whatnot that they have coming up this weekend. And the next weekend, best of luck to you, Loretta, with 6 days in the Dome. I can't believe it's already been a year since we officially met face-to-face and in person. We've known each other longer than that, but mostly through, the pandemic online type of webinar.
Right.
So, yeah, it'll be great. And we'll catch up in 2 weeks then. So best of luck and take care.
All right. Bye.